They kept their headcount totally flat, but still managed to onboard massive enterprise brands in a matter of weeks and push out staggering top-line growth. It's honestly a total flex. So welcome to Earnings Unscripted. Today's August 5th, 2026, and we're unpacking Shopify, ticker SHOP, and their second quarter print. And Miro, looking at this, it's just wild. Revenue grew roughly 33% year over year.
Yeah, Harley Finkelstein basically took a victory lap on the call. He called it a monster quarter, and frankly, the math backs him up. You get that kind of top-line expansion, but they also delivered adjusted earnings of 42 cents a share, comfortably above expectations. The real story for me, though, is their capital discipline.
Right, because they're essentially operating a much larger machine without adding the human overhead.
Exactly. The discipline pushed their free cash flow margin up to 18%. That's a massive level of cash generation for a company still scaling software automation and international payments so aggressively.
The market certainly noticed. The stock gapped up super hard pre-market, and even though it faded a little during the regular session, it still closed up 17% on the day. And since people often get overly swept up in these giant market pops, keep in mind we're just spitballing ideas here, so please make your own financial decisions.
Definitely, but you can completely see why buyers rushed in. You mentioned the enterprise momentum earlier. They locked in Balmain. That's a historic luxury fashion house. Traditional enterprise software transitions usually take, a year, 2 years?
Minimum. Usually with armies of highly paid consultants practically living in your office.
Right, except Shopify migrated their entire global stack in a matter of weeks. They literally went live the morning of the earnings release. That proves their enterprise infrastructure is no longer just a toolkit for small merchants. They're actively stealing lunch from legacy giants like SAP.
It's incredibly fast. But before we get too star-eyed about their operational speed, there's a really strange ghost sitting right in the middle of their net income line, causing a gigantic paper whiplash. And I really want to know if it's hiding something worse.
Well, it's not hiding something worse, but it completely distorts the quarter. You look at GAAP net income, and it's sitting at about $1.5 billion. Sounds amazing, except last quarter, they posted a massive loss.
So the core business didn't just magically flip then?
Right. It's almost entirely driven by mark-to-market adjustments on their venture investments. So between the first and second quarters, you have this nearly $2.1 billion sequential whiplash. I mean, if you strip that equity noise out, their actual underlying operating income just steadily grew to around $488 million.
Okay, so that top-line net income number is effectively useless for telling us how the platform is actually doing, which means we should probably look at cash flow. We praised that huge free cash flow margin earlier, but is it actually clean?
Mostly, but there's a really interesting quirk here. They got a slight accounting tailwind in Canada because of how they handled merchant cash advances.
Wait, sorry, a tailwind from cash advances? Are they physically changing how much they lend, or is this just like a spreadsheet thing?
Mostly a spreadsheet thing. Starting in April, Canadian regulators required those cash advances to be classified as loans. So the cash outflow shifted from their operating activities into...
Okay, hold on. Let me make sure I've got this. The money is still leaving Shopify's bank account to fund these merchants, but because it's filed under investing now, it doesn't count against their operating cash flow, which makes their free cash flow look better?
You got it. It inflates the free cash flow margin by roughly 100 basis points. The cash is still out the door. It just lives on a different line item.
I mean, what a great time to get a regulatory gift like that. But honestly, it speaks to how much of their identity is morphing into financial services.
Yeah, look, Shopify Payments volume hit 68% of global merchandise volume this quarter. They're structurally shifting more and more weight into these merchant solutions.
Right, which that's the classic double-edged sword.
Meaning the margin dilution?
Exactly. Payments and loans are inherently lower margin than just selling pure software subscriptions. So as the merchant solution side outgrows the software side, it pulls down their blended gross margins. The software gets them in the door, but the real monetization is tied to those merchant swiping credit cards.
And management explicitly warned about that disconnect for the third quarter. Gross profit growth is going to trail revenue growth because of that mix shift. But they're leaning into it because the lock-in is incredible, especially when you factor in the AI features they're bundling.
Oh,
The AI tools are wild. The CEO literally said on the call, I think Shopify is probably the most AI-pilled company in the world.
He's not exaggerating. Merchants used Sidekick, their internal AI agent, to create over 36,000 custom apps just this quarter. That's up 200% sequentially. They're making the back end so frictionless that even non-technical sellers can automate their inventory or marketing.
Which locks them in even deeper. You get accustomed to that level of operational help. You aren't ripping out your store to try a legacy competitor.
Right. And when those sellers scale, they lean even harder into Shopify's financial products, which brings us right back to the underlying risk. They're taking on the underwriting for all these businesses.
So if they're essentially acting as a shadow bank for thousands of small retailers, what happens to those loan losses if macro consumer spending actually drops off?
Well, that's the genuine risk. If consumer demand breaks, their loan book takes a direct hit. But frankly, management isn't acting like a macro cliff is coming. They seem completely unfazed heading into next quarter.
Right, because they're not pulling back on their growth targets at all, are they?
Exactly. Jeff Hoffmeister guided for third quarter revenue growth somewhere in the low 30s% range. And on the efficiency side, they're keeping the belt tight, projecting operating expenses to step down as a percentage of total sales. That's an incredibly disciplined ship, especially when you consider all this new AI infrastructure they're funding.
Which is exactly why they can afford to play the long game here, because on top of the financials, they're using these tools to completely change how people find products online. Did you catch Harley's anecdote on the call about the tin can phone?
The Toy Story. Yeah, that's actually a really good tell for how their search architecture works now.
Yeah, he was trying to buy a screenless phone for his kid, and normally if you run a search like that, you just get blasted with generic megastore results. But Shopify's internal AI routed him directly to this tiny independent seller who made exactly what he needed. So the algorithm actively pushes buyers toward niche merchants instead of away from them.
Right. It bypasses the giant retailers entirely. Something like 75% of their AI-attributed orders came from outside the top 100 merchant categories. That's a huge deal. Everyone feared AI would just centralize commerce to the absolute biggest players. Instead, it's acting like a heat-seeking missile for the long tail.
So essentially, they're acting as a shadow bank for these small businesses. They're automating their back-end code, and now they're playing matchmaker for their obscure inventory. It's almost not even a software company anymore. It's just the entire independent internet economy wrapped in a monthly subscription.
Basically, as long as they don't let those loan defaults spike, their moat is looking incredibly deep.
All right, I think that's the perfect place to leave it. They built the toll booth, they're funding the drivers, and now they're drawing the maps. We'll see if the consumer traffic holds up next quarter.
Catch you later.
Before we let you go, tapping follow in your podcast app's the easiest way to catch our next breakdown. Also, just as a transparent heads up, this whole show is a completely AI-generated project from our synthetic voices to the script itself, turning today's Shopify transcript into audio in a matter of hours. We'd love to hear your ticker requests, so shoot us an email at earningsunscripted@datamadness.ca or check the X link in the show notes. Have a great one.
Take care.